Welcome to WorldWire. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. It began with a message, a digital thunderclap that echoed across the nation. On a November morning, President Trump took to Truth Social and announced a plan, a tariff dividend. He promised a direct payment, £1,600 per person, funded by tariffs he'd championed. In a country struggling with the cost of living, it felt like a lifeline. News channels scrambled, social media erupted, and people started dreaming, paying off debts, fixing cars, a better Christmas. The president's message was simple. Tariff revenues were pouring in, and it was time to give back to the people. The promise cut through political noise, uniting the nation in a single question. Is this real? Supporters hailed it as proof of his Britain First agenda. Critics were drowned out by excitement. The idea of a $1,600 check with the president's name became a national obsession. In pubs, supermarkets, and over garden fences, everyone was talking about it. The tariff dividend was no longer just a policy proposal, it was a focal point for hope. But as euphoria faded, hard questions surfaced. How would it work? Who would pay? Was it even legal? The nation held its breath, waiting for answers. The drama was only just beginning. The promise was out there, hanging in the air. It was a powerful, intoxicating idea that spread from Westminster to the quietest corners of the country. Everyone was talking about it. The usual arguments and divisions were replaced by a single unifying question. Is this real? Could it actually happen? The president's supporters hailed it as a stroke of genius. Critics were immediately suspicious, but their cautious warnings were drowned out by the sheer force of the public's excitement. The idea of a £1,600 check, with the president's name metaphorically signed at the bottom, was a political masterstroke that captured the nation's full and undivided attention. The drama was only just beginning. The nation held its breath, waiting for answers. So, what was the tariff dividend plan? At its core, it was simple. Use billions from tariffs to send $1,600 to every person in the country. It was framed as a dividend, not a handout, a reward for enduring economic shifts. The plan targeted working and middle-class families with high earners, excluded, though the cutoff was unclear. Would children qualify? Would families get more? Details were missing, fueling speculation and hope. The president argued tariffs had finally made foreign countries pay, and now Britain would benefit. He painted a picture of families spending their dividend, boosting the economy. The story was compelling and hard for opponents to counter. But the plan relied on a particular view of tariffs, that foreign exporters paid the price. In reality, as economists would soon point out, things were more complicated. For now, the dream of a $1,600 dividend was alive, and millions wanted to believe. The lack of specifics did little to dampen the initial excitement. The narrative was powerful, the dream was alive, and for millions, it was a dream they desperately wanted to believe in. The dream soon collided with reality. Economists quickly found a fatal flaw. The numbers didn't add up. Giving $1,600 to every eligible person would cost around $480 billion a year. But tariff revenue, even in a record year, was only $155 billion, less than a third of what was needed. The plan was short by over $300 billion. Even with stricter eligibility or lower income caps, the math never worked. Experts from the Institute for Fiscal Studies and others called it a fiscal fantasy. Another problem. Tariffs aren't paid by foreign governments, but by British importers, who pass costs to consumers. So, the money for the dividend was already coming from the people it was meant to help. Economists argued the best relief would be to scrap tariffs, lowering prices directly. The promise was built on a foundation of financial impossibility. The most effective way to help people, economists argued, would be to scrap the tariffs altogether. The government was simply collecting money from British consumers at the checkout and then promising to give a fraction of it back. The numbers were not just a little off, they were in a different universe. The plan was a fiscal fantasy. While the public was captivated, chaos reigned behind closed doors. The president's announcement blindsided his own administration. The Chancellor of the Exchequer and senior officials scrambled to understand a policy invented on the spot. The government had no plan to execute. The Chancellor, caught off guard, tried to reframe the promise as a possible future tax cut, not a direct payment. This public contradiction exposed the chaos at the heart of government. Aides worked overnight, trying to reverse engineer a policy to match the president's declaration. Meanwhile, the administration's lawyers faced a legal crisis. The president's promise undermined their argument that tariffs were regulatory, not revenue-raising. The president's words had torpedoed his own legal case. The confusion was not just a matter of public relations, it had serious legal implications. The corridors of Whitehall were filled with a sense of panic as officials realized the president may have just torpedoed his own case. The government was in disarray. As the administration scrambled, the Supreme Court was reviewing the entire legal foundation of the tariff regime. Businesses and trade groups argued the president had overstepped, imposing sweeping taxes without Parliament's consent. The key question: did the president have the authority to levy such tariffs, or was this a major question requiring Parliament's approval? Justices were skeptical, probing the limits of executive power. The president's own words about the dividend haunted the courtroom, contradicting the government's legal arguments. Lawyers tried to defend two opposing ideas: tariffs as regulation and tariffs as revenue. The inconsistency was glaring. The stage was set for a landmark ruling. The government's lawyers were forced to try and defend two completely contradictory ideas at the same time. The court saw an administration making policy on the fly, with little regard for legal coherence. The stage was set for a landmark ruling. The fate of the tariff dividend and the president's authority hung in the balance. The Supreme Court's decision came swiftly and decisively. The justices ruled the president had exceeded his authority. Such sweeping tariffs required Parliament's approval. The entire tariff system was declared illegal. The government could no longer collect these taxes, and the funding for the $1,600 dividend vanished instantly. The promise was now not just financially, but legally impossible. The dream that electrified a nation was dead. The court's decision also raised a new problem: what to do with the $155 billion already collected. The logical recipients were the importers who paid the tariffs, not ordinary families. The government now faced the prospect of refunding massive sums to corporations. Instead of checks to families, the Treasury might send millions to large companies. The ruling didn't just stop the plan, it threatened to reverse it, leaving citizens with nothing but higher prices and a broken promise. The consequences of the ruling were immediate and chaotic. The country was left with a financial and political mess. The president's reaction was immediate and furious. He attacked the justices, calling them enemies of the people and blaming them for betraying hard-working families. He ignored the legal reasoning, casting himself as a victim of a biased system. The public was left confused and disappointed. Millions who hoped for a payment felt betrayed. The president's rhetoric fueled anger at the courts, deepening division. The nation was left divided and disillusioned. The immediate effect should be lower prices, as tariffs are removed, but relief will be slow. The fate of the $155 billion in collected tariffs remains unresolved. Will businesses pass savings to consumers, or keep the money? The president, politically wounded, may try to push a new version of his plan, but success is uncertain. The saga is a lesson in modern politics. A powerful promise, amplified by social media, can capture a nation, even if built on fantasy. For now, the second $600 checks remain a dream. The country must navigate the turbulent wake of a promise too good to be true. The future is uncertain, and the nation waits for what comes next.